This is Josh with American Barndominiums. I'm here with Colby Grady, who's the CEO. And one of the questions that we get a lot is about the cost to build a barndominium. And there's a lot of different ways that we can look at this. There's a lot of different answers to that question. Colby's going to share with you kind of the general average rule of thumb cost of, your typical average build. And then we're going to talk about some strategic ways, if you're on a budget, that you can significantly reduce that cost so that if you have a lower budget than what you might be thinking about or expecting, we can still work with that. And so, Colby, just tell me, nationwide across the US, what can somebody expect in their head about an average build construction cost for a barn dominium?
Josh, across the US at 145, 150 to 165, 170 mark seems to be the average coming in.
So that's a price per square foot, and it varies depending on a couple of factors. What are some of those factors that create such a variance?
The three that stick out to me are how tall is your sidewalls, what's your roof line look like, what's your design on the interior look like, how tall are your ceilings, things like that, the big things that everybody thinks about.
And so can you talk to us just a quick example of those three? Like what does an expensive high-end roof line look like versus a more humble one? Just kind of to give us a conception.
You're I guess, to put it in layman's terms, the more simple it is, the cheaper it is, obviously. If we just have one roof line going from left to right and maybe, that gable, just a one gable, and then maybe a reverse gable coming out off your porch, that's definitely going to be the cheapest. When you start designing these barndos with several different roof lines, the valleys and different things, that's when your prices are going to go up tremendously.
And so if somebody's thinking, okay, 140 to 165 square foot, I'm going to do some quick math on that. And man, that's way out of my budget. We've got some ways to reduce that cost, some kind of unconventional ways, if you will. What would you, if you were to break those down? We got roof line, we got walls, we got interior finishes. But if we're diving in a little bit more granular, what are some other things that we can do to really save those costs? Can you talk about some of the things that you found over the years where you can cut costs without cutting quality?
Right. One of the main things that drives the cost up during the construction phase is your support beams going to support your roof across the spread of your house, right? So 30 by 40, 40 by 50, those are standard sizes that people throw out there. That's what you're seeing on the internet. So to span that, you have to have a certain size beam to make that happen. And with that certain size beam comes an added cost. So you could use, and I'm just giving an example here. You could use a 12 inch or a 14 inch, 16 or 18 pound I-beam, okay, to make that clear span. So one thing we do to reduce costs for clients is we may drop that down to an 8 or 10 inch I-beam, but we strategically design our homes that you can hide a support post, if you will, inside of an interior wall. So you line all that up to reduce the cost of the construction of the framing. I hope this makes sense here, but to reduce that cost overall. And we were on a job site about 3 weeks ago, and we reduced the cost just in conversation on this job site by about $11,000 by doing that, making some simple tweaks to bring that number down for that customer. And the integrity is the same on the actual build.
And so another thing that we can do about saving unnecessary square footage, I know that that's something where moving the HVAC into the attic and saving that extra square footage reduces your cost significantly. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So, Josh, a lot of people put their HVAC and their water heater, if they're not using the tankless, they'll put it on the ground in a closet in their house, right? Some of them put them in the attic automatically. We've seen a lot of that over the last few years, but typically a barndo design is everything on the ground, that HVAC and that water heater, standard water heater on the ground. If you move that to the attic, you know, the trick of the trade is a builder gets paid off the square footage that he builds, right? So one of the things you can do is take and move that in the attic and reduce that square footage by eliminating that closet that they have to go in. And, you know, if you're talking about a 3,000 square foot house at $150 a square foot on the average number we talked about, that's 450,000. Okay. Well, if you take 150 square foot out of that, I'm doing some math here, you're saving $22,000. And that builder
for a broom closet.
For a broom closet, exactly. So just use my example from 3 weeks ago when we were on site out there of $12,000-$13,000 there, and then $22,000 here. Well, you're already saving 40 grand, and we hadn't even started yet. That's originally, well, I won't get into that, but that's the origin. That's what a barndo's for, is to build cheaper. In my opinion, what has happened is these builders have found out it's a craze, it's a fad. I wouldn't say fad now. 10 years ago, it was a fad, but it's here to stay now. And they've upped their process to make that money, to make that variance. So
let's talk about some ways that we can be more efficient as far as what goes in the walls. One of the primary expenses of building a custom home or a barndominium is wiring and water lines. So could you talk about how can we be more efficient with that?
So, you know, if you can design your house where you can have your water in the same wall. And what I mean by that is I'll give maybe a poor example, but I hope it paints the picture here. If you have a kitchen that backs up to a primary bedroom and a primary bathroom, then you want to try to put that primary bathroom on the same wall that adjoins the kitchen, that separates the kitchen from the bathroom. When you run your water up from the slab, you only have to run it up in one place, and then you can go either direction there. If you don't do that, you have to run more lines underneath your slab or overhead, depending on how you're designing it or doing where you live, honestly. And then, you know, obviously with more water line comes more money, more expense. You got to pay for it. Plumber's going to charge you more to run it, you know, so on and so forth. Same thing with electrical. If you can design, if you know where your electricity is going to come in from the exterior of your home, on the left side, right side, front, back, whatever it may be, try to design your major electrical loads to be in that area, the point of contact with your home, meaning your air conditioning unit, your outside unit. You don't want to run your breaker box on one end of the house, your air conditioner on the other end of the house, because you have to have a bigger wire to run from that box over to your HVAC unit, right? Bigger wire, more money with the cost increase, especially over the last few years since COVID, of how much wire costs. So try to keep all that as minimal as possible. Try to keep it in the same spot to where the main water source comes in, electric source comes in.
And what have you seen if we're more economical about our pipe placements, our wiring placements, how can that impact the cost? Can you give us just an idea or an estimate?
You know, I don't, Josh, to be honest, I don't have a definite cost on that off the top of my head. I can tell you that I have seen one wire run across a house that's cost up to $3,000. You know, that's just the wire. That's not the labor to go into it. So, you know, 3,000 versus the overall budget may not seem like a lot, but when you start doing these little things that we're talking about and saying 1,000 here, 1,500 there, you know, 10,000 here, before you know it, your average cost square foot's down to $110 a square foot.
And it's those little 1% changes. So if you think I got a $300,000 build and I got a $3,000 wire going across from it, that's 1% of the cost of my home. but I'm not going to even notice if the AC is on this side of the house versus that side of the house. So
Right.
it doesn't matter to me what side it's on if I can save $3,000 on the cost.
And Josh, you're exactly right. And what I want to try to get the point across today is we're trying to help our budget friendly clients, right? That's our goal. That's my motto is we may have to tweak the design of your house to make it work because you don't want the air conditioner in your front yard. I mean, we're not going to do that. But so we may have to tweak a few things on the interior to get it where it's not cumbersome for you, but we can make that happen with our knowledge and skill that's behind us.
So let's talk about construction waste. That's another kind of cost factor here that we design things without thinking about how materials actually are delivered to the job site. So could you talk a little bit about how to be more economical with your construction waste?
Yeah, so this is on a non-engineered building. This is on a building that we buy raw material and fab it in the field, if you will, or fabricate it in the field. If you don't have that, that's another cost savings. If you're one of the fortunate ones that don't have to have an engineered building, you're going to save money straight up front anyway. On top of those savings of not being engineered, talk to the designer, tell them, hey, I'm not engineered. I want my house designed in such a way that there will be no waste. You know, most steel comes in 20s and 24s on purlin. There's 25s on I-beams, 30s on I-beams, you know. So typically a 5 or 10 foot increment is what you're looking at. And for the width, for the length, you're looking at an 8 or a 2 foot increment, I guess, or on increments of 2 foot because they come in 20s and 24s. But so even number, odd number, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. If you design it that way, because here's the thing, guys, if you design it to what you exactly want in your head, you may be spending $4,000 or $5,000 in material that's getting cut off and thrown in the dumpster, and you're still getting charged for that. You know, there is going to be waste on a job site. We can't get rid of all waste, but we can do our diligence to make sure that we can reduce that cost as much as possible in the design phase. It all starts in the design phase.
And that's another 1 to 2% off of the construction cost. And those little 1% here and there, they start to add up to a significant amount of money. Just the tips that you've shared so far, you know, if we're doing a rough tally, that's at least $50,000 or more off the cost of a typical build.
Yeah.
And when you walk into the house, it's going to look like the exact same house
Yeah.
as before.
You'll never know. Yeah.
That's right. So these are all things that are basically invisible to the homeowner that are just unnecessary cost centers that you can eliminate or optimize to save a significant amount, up to 10, 20% off of your construction cost. Let's talk about the interior finish outs, which is one of the easiest ways to save money.
Yeah. So, you know, I may be going ahead of myself here, but like on interior finish outs, if you'll, I don't have, well, if you're a DIY person, one of the things you can do on the interior is you can paint the house yourself. And I know that may sound like a daunting task at first, but you can rent a paint sprayer from any Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, any local hardware store will rent you a paint sprayer. And you still use a high quality paint. And you can, what we're seeing right now is it's just costing us in labor anywhere from $7,500 to $14,000 just in labor to paint.
Oh.
And we can guide you through how to paint. We can help you with what you don't know. But right there, if you'll just spend a weekend with your family making memories, painting your house that you're building, you can save you're going to make $14,000 that weekend. I'd love to make $14,000 in a weekend. You know what I mean? So if you look at it that way, that's one way to really save on the interior. The other way is, and you know, we talk about finishes and we talk about upscale finishes and we talk about builder grade finishes. Nobody wants builder grade finishes. I don't put builder grade finishes in anything. It's junk. But there's a step above that builder grade, which is not your Home Depot. It's more like your Ferguson's. They're a national supplier for plumbing. Um, excuse me, they're a step above that Home Depot, but they're not as expensive as your higher end finishes that last. If you're thrifty and can shop through that, you'll save quite a bit of money doing that as well.
Yeah. So $7,500 to $14,000 just to paint.
Just the
And
thing.
and pretty much anybody can paint. And we can give you instructions on that, and there's YouTube and all that stuff. But if you're looking to find ways to reduce your costs, painting it yourself and hanging, you mentioned hanging your doorknobs and door fixtures using barn doors. Can you talk a little bit more about that real quick?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a budget sheet here from an actual job, and we have almost $4,000 in labor just to put in doorknobs and hang in a barn door, deadbolts. I'm going through the list here. Sorry, guys, but so all of those little things that what I'm getting at, the trim finish out. I don't mean nailing the trim on the floor. Obviously, you can because that's a very easy task. But if you can talk to your builder, talk with us, whoever your builder is, and let us know, hey, I can do a little bit of something to help save the money. That there you go again. I mean, you're looking at another $2, $3, $4,000 savings right there on top of everything. So that number just keeps coming down as we go.
Yeah. And again, yeah, rough tally from this is, saving on the paint, saving on the AC in the attic to save unnecessary square footage, unnecessary wiring, unnecessary water pipes, unnecessary, hanging of door fixtures, which, anybody with a screwdriver can do. Okay. If you wanted to do some of that on your own, just from this conversation, we've been able to save at least $60,000-$70,000 off of a typical build, just by some things that are completely invisible and some things that are DIY that aren't very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we're really getting up there where, if your budget came out at $350,000 and you're thinking, hey, that's way too much. Great. We just found a way to save you 20% of that. That brings your build cost down to $280. And all of a sudden it starts to be a lot more palatable for you to be able to control the construction cost. And if you have a mortgage or something like that, paying off that mortgage is a lot easier than $350, especially if you're on a budget. Any other kind of big ideas about ways that we can reduce the cost and get that cost per square foot down for those who are really trying to keep it into a budget?
The only other thing that comes to mind for this conversation is before you ever, well, during your design process, it may be best in situations to hire someone to come look at the land you're going to build on. They may have some ideas. I'll give you a real life example. Me and our vice president of construction went to a job site last week, and where they wanted the house was kind of the lowest point on the property. And when we told them, when we shot grade and did all that, and when we told them, look, you're looking at about $40,000 in dirt. That sounds like they're in a gully, right, by that number, but they weren't. They were just on the lowest point. So we had that conversation with them. We were able to save them $40,000 in dirt just by moving the house 20 foot back. So if you don't know those things, like we have a whole service, that's what we do. We help people, we guide people. So get a professional out there that can tell you, because you might be making $100,000 mistake and don't even realize it. Once your plans are done, then you're like, oh man, I didn't realize this, and now I got to come up with another 50 or 100 grand to make it happen.
And also running utilities out there too. There was a customer that had already purchased some land and didn't realize that there were no utilities, and that was a big bill too.
Yeah, so we had somebody buy some land, and there was to run just the water line. It didn't go in front of their land, was going to be about 100 grand, and same with the electricity. The water people, automatically thought too, we'll just drill a well, and a well wasn't feasible. So they ended up having to sell that piece of property at a loss so they could find somewhere else to build their home. But it's things like that that a professional needs to go out and give the advice on.
Got it. Well, hey, we're going to go ahead and wrap up for here. Colby Grady is the CEO of American Barndominiums. Thanks so much for coming on and sharing some nuggets of wisdom for those that are looking to reduce the cost of their barndo build. So if you're on a budget and you're looking for ways, you get a quote and you're thinking, 140, 160 square foot, that's not going to work for me. We can find ways to still get you exactly the home that you want, but we just change the way that we design it and we optimize it so that we can reduce the cost in this situation up to 20% off of the cost just by doing a couple of things yourself, moving some things around behind the walls that you'll never even notice are gone. So if you have already booked a consult with us, we're looking forward to talking with you. If you have not done so yet, please click on the link here on this video, and we'll make sure that we give you the same level of attention that we give to all of our other customers. If you're on a budget and you're trying to keep your costs under a certain amount, we'll work with you to make sure that we can make your barndominium dream and bring it to life. And we're looking forward to talking to you soon. Take care, everybody.